Hello, this is Julian with Coffee Reviews, and today we'll be recapping our reviews from the month of June 2025. This video will feature three things: a discussion of our favorite coffee this month, as well as any honorable mentions, our upcoming coffee of the month, and anything else pertaining to this channel that we feel is worth discussing or addressing. So let's go ahead and get started with our honorable mentions, and as always, these are in order of when we reviewed them on this channel. And first up, we have the Pepe Hijón Finca Soledad Toxtator Wash Processed Ecuador from Say Coffee out of Brooklyn, New York. And at its very best, this one offered some of the highest highs we've had this year, but at its very worst, it offered some of the lowest lows, as at its very worst, it was reminiscent of a scan of SpaghettiOs, but at its very best, it was reminiscent of the Pepe Hijón Toxtator Wash Processed Ecuador that we'd reviewed from Manhattan a couple of years ago, which as of this moment is still my favorite coffee that we've ever reviewed on this channel, as this one offered a lot of those similar, very strong sugary qualities that coffee had, all presented in a very clean sense. That being said, the very stark contrast between experiences within this coffee made for an inconsistent experience, and for that reason it's hard to say that this one was our favorite coffee that we've had this month, but even then, at its very best, it was definitely one of the best experiences we've had this entire year. This one is no longer available for purchase. Next up, we have the San Sebastian SL9 Wash Processed Peru from Terraform Coffee out of Shanghai, China. And this coffee is pretty important for a couple of reasons, the first of which being that it did renew our faith in Terraform, but the second being that it did renew our faith in SL9 coffees, as I was a little hesitant on purchasing this one going into it, largely because I did have some inconsistent experiences with Terraform in the past, and in addition to that, I'd been yet to have an SL9 coffee that I did enjoy before this one. That being said, this one was extremely impressive for a number of reasons, but the most outstanding quality that it did offer was an immense level of clarity, as it did score a level 5 for cleanliness, which is extremely rare for non-Gesha coffees. So for that reason, this one was easily one of my favorite coffees that we've reviewed this month, easily my favorite SL9 coffee, and massive credit to both the roaster and producer on this one, as I felt like they both did an amazing job with this coffee. This one, surprisingly, is still available for purchase for anybody that is interested. Next up, we have the El Burro Lot 17 Wash Processed Panama from H&S Coffee Roasters out of Laramie, Wyoming. And this one right here was an exclusive collaboration with Airworks, and a coffee that I was extremely excited about for a couple of reasons. First of which being that we've had some great results with H&S over the last couple of years, and the second reason being that washed Panamanian Geshas are still some of my favorite coffees in the entire world, and it did give us an opportunity to compare and contrast this one with some other roasters that we've reviewed this coffee from in the past as well. Now, the kind of tricky thing about this coffee is that we got some pretty inconsistent results until the very end, largely because this coffee did take quite a bit of time to open up. And by the time we did finish the review, it still was in the process of opening up. And for that reason, I didn't necessarily feel like we got the very best of this coffee. But at the very best that we did experience, it was on par with some of our favorite coffees that we've had the entire year. That being said, we've had a very good year when it comes to washed Panamanian Geshas, as this one in most years, just based off of that 1-2 cup experience that we had alone, would be a very strong contender for one of our favorite coffees from the entirety of the year. But given that it's up against some very strong competition, it kind of falls into the middle of the pack this month anyway, but I still very much enjoyed this coffee and wish I could have waited a little longer to work on the review. This one is no longer available for purchase. Next up, we have the Dolce Misterio, the Wash Processed Columbia from H&S Coffee Roasters out of Laramie, Wyoming. And this one was somewhat of an afterthought in the purchases that we did make, as I was much more interested in the Mejorado coffee that H&S did release. That being said, I did enjoy this one a fair bit more, and it was kind of interesting hearing your guys' feedback on this coffee, as some people still said that they struggled with this one mightily, but others said that they also really enjoyed the experience that they did have with this one. And I've said in the past, I have mostly mixed feelings on Pink Bourbon coffees, as I feel like it's maybe 1 out of 10, 1 out of 20 that I'm very impressed with. And this one was going to be that 1 out of 10, 1 out of 20, as I found it to be the best Pink Bourbon I've had this year. That being said, I feel like it had a pretty low ceiling in terms of how much it's able to compete with some of the other coffees that we reviewed this month, as all of the other coffees we've discussed have definitely had some higher highs than this one. That being said, this one, interestingly, was probably the most consistent of all of the coffees that we are discussing in this recap, and for that reason, I very much enjoyed this coffee, offering some great cleanliness and definitely some great sweetness, as H&S has released a couple of our favorite coffees this year, including our favorite Rwandan and now our favorite Pink Bourbon coffee. I just checked actually, and this one is no longer available for purchase. And that takes us to our favorite coffee this month, and that is going to be the Bambito Sakura Wash Process Panama from Archer's Coffee out of Sharjah, United Arab Emirates. And the backstory behind this coffee is pretty funny, as we'd received some information from somebody to pick up the Chivas estate, a different wash-processed Panamanian geisha, but Airworks received such a limited supply of that coffee that we ended up going with this one instead, as we were deciding between this coffee and the Firestone, but ultimately decided to go with this coffee given that we'd reviewed a number of Firestone geishas recently, but it had been a while since I've had any Bambito geisha coffees, and I was very pleased with the decision that we did make, as we'd go on to participate in a cupping of all of the Panamanian geishas, including the Chivas estate geisha and the Firestone geisha, only for this one to be my very clear favorite, as it offered all the quality that I was looking for within a Panamanian geisha, including an immense level of cleanliness and florality as well, making this one of my favorite Panamanian geishas that we've reviewed this entire year. And this one was a little bit more consistent than that El Burro Lot 17 coffee, which definitely did seem to help it in the long run, as at its very best, it was near as good, if not as good, as any of the other Panamanian geishas that we have reviewed on this channel as of this moment this year. So massive credit to Archers, as this is easily my favorite coffee that I've had from them and one of my favorite coffees that we've had this entire year. This one is still available for purchase as of the time of recording. All right, and next up we have our coffee of the month, and that is going to be the Takizi Katuai, a wash-processed Bolivian coffee from Coffee Collective out of Frederiksberg, Denmark. And going into the Coffee of the Month live stream, I was really hoping that the European coffee roasters were going to be the theme for this month, largely because we'd been doing a lot of American and Canadian-based coffee roasters as our Coffee of the Month theme. So seeing a lot of suggestions for European roasters definitely did seem to help out, and I was kind of surprised to see just how much this one did dominate in the polls, as there were some very strong contenders within that Coffee of the Month poll. And truth be told, the coffee roaster that I was going for was Coffea Circular, given that it has been well over a year since we've last reviewed any coffee from Coffea Circular as of this moment. But I was still curious about Coffee Collective's coffees, given that it has been a while since we've done a full review of any of their coffees. I've mentioned that they do appear quite a bit in our Cafe Box Advent Calendar Blind Taste Test Rankings video series. However, we haven't reviewed a lot of their coffees, largely because I haven't found their coffees at a lot of local multi-roasters. I haven't seen a lot of people carrying their coffees either, and it's largely because some of the feedback has been pretty mixed on their coffees, at least based off what I've heard. And I've definitely echoed a little bit of that sentiment in some of the more recent experiences that we did have with them, as I do remember there were some coffees a couple of years ago that I found to be a surprising bit more developed than I would have expected from a coffee roaster like Coffee Collective. That being said, it's definitely going to be very interesting to revisit them, as the Takizi coffees are a much sought after and desired coffee. In fact, the Takizi Geisha, when we did review it a number of years ago now, was one of my favorite coffees the year that we did review it, and I have nothing but positive things to say about the Takizi Geisha coffees. So it'll definitely be interesting to see how this one performs in comparison to that, but the expectations certainly aren't as high as the expectations are for that coffee. And that takes us to the final thing that I wanted to discuss this month, and this is actually some pretty big news. After many, many requests, we are finally going to implement a list of coffees that we are in the process of working on. So as of the time of recording, I have not created the list, but I've kind of been thinking about how I want to go about this list. And the big categories that we're going to have are coffees that we've ordered, coffees that we're in the process of working on, coffees that we've recorded and are just waiting to review. A lot of that information we're going to put on another Google Doc, and we're going to present it in, I want to say it's going to be on our Instagram, one of the links in our link tree, but in addition to that, we might consider including it in our monthly recap videos. I was really thinking about how I wanted to go about this, because it'd be very difficult and tedious to continuously update that list every single time we did purchase a coffee or order a coffee, because as you'd imagine, given that we're reviewing 5 to 6 coffees every single week, we order a lot of coffee, so updating that list every single time we did order coffee would be a little bit time consuming, and we're already a bit on a time crunch when it comes to the amount of stuff that we're able to do. So for that reason, I feel like we'll probably try to update it maybe every single Friday, as that would give us an opportunity to just kind of cycle through the types of videos that we are going to be releasing, the ones that we are going to be working on, and the stuff that we are going to be ordering. I don't know how strict I'm going to be to keep up that schedule and make sure that I continuously update that list, but I will try to do my very best. As I've mentioned, so many of you guys have wanted us to do that for a very long time now, and I feel like we probably can do that, given that we do release information time to time as to what sort of coffees we are working on. So it's something that we will tinker with, something that we will try out and see how you guys feel about it, but I'm sure a lot of you will be very excited to see us release that list here, starting with this video, so look forward to that. But I think that's going to be the end of this recap. So as I always say, if you guys are enjoying the content, give this video a like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed. This right here has been a recap for our reviews for the month of June 2025. Thank you for watching.